The opinions expressed in the following are those of its participants and do not necessarily reflect those of the producers and the Six Talk Podcast Network. Also, the following contains mature material and mild language, which may not be suitable for all audiences. Discretion is advised.
This is the Anime Roundtable Canada, presented by Anime North on this Wednesday evening, June 8th, 2022. You can contact us online on the web, animeroundtable.com, Twitter and Instagram @Anime Roundtable, and email us, animeroundtable@gmail.com. Well, this is good news. We get to do an episode almost on time. We're not late. 2 weeks on from the last episode. This is actually progress.
Guess it all depends on your idea of a timetable, right?
Yeah, which as things have kind of started to normalize again, at least in terms of real life, as I said, it kind of messes up this show.
Well, there could be other things too, Mike. I saw last week Heritage Committee had hearings on C11, and they're just going to push that through, so we'll have another algorithm to jump through to see if we're Canadian enough, right?
Or we might get lucky and win the algorithm.
See, that's the thing. I have some mixed feelings about that. I'm not totally sure it's a good thing overall, but may not be the worst thing for the show.
The great thing that was hilarious about that hearing is that the Liberals had the majority, of course, on the thing, so they got to do all the witnesses except one. All the witnesses they called were from industry, and of the telecoms, Rogers, Bell, Chorus, whatever you want to say, they called not one, but two Bell executives. A female and a male Bell executive. It's like what was the point of that?
Just Bell.
It just, and the funny thing was, a lot of them were saying the same things they said about C10, and then of course the joke was the Conservatives. They're the only ones who actually called a content creator, and they called JJ McCullough from BC to come on over, and I think he had a nice little YouTube video on that saying only crazy person that was there, that people were wondering about, saying, what are you talking about? Talking crazy talk. But the funny thing, though, is he's the only one who actually showed up in person. Every other person came in video. It was like, wow.
There's a certain irony to that, isn't there?
Think about it. He had to come all the way on his own dime from BC to show up in person. He had to wait because they were doing a vote on another bill that actually concerned his province of BC in regards to small amounts of drugs. And so that delayed the hearing. But he showed up in person. All the others that may have had offices in Ottawa didn't show up. And it's like, how much do you guys care about this bill? It feels like they're just pushing it through, and we'll see how it affects us all, right?
Well, that sort of comes down to the apathy theme that's been plaguing Canadian politics in the last couple weeks, or probably even longer, but kind of came to a head this week. I mean, we're going to talk Anime North again, but one thing we'll talk about again is also the Toronto Congress Centre, which is also traditionally used for Conservative Party gatherings, whether they're election night parties or party conventions to elect new leaders. And so was the case again last week when the provincial government, or when the provincial election here in Ontario happened. The Conservatives won a re-election with an even bigger majority, and Premier Doug Ford's election party, just like 4 years ago, took place at the Toronto Congress Centre. So what an optic there. Anyway, as I said, it's kind of cool that we're able to do it 2 weeks in a row, and it's even cooler that it's a full table. So Mike Nicholas sitting at 6 points, and then James Austin, Kevin Ing, Mohamed Shamarki, Jeff Gregg at their respective points throughout the Greater Toronto and Hamilton area. When we say we have to kind of say GTHA these days, I think. Okay, so where else do you want to, we talked was it C11?
Yep,
C10?
it's C11 now because C10 was killed with the election, and C11 is where it is now. But that'll just be another algorithm that we'll have to jump through and stuff like that. But
Yeah,
who
well,
knows how that goes? But it was funny listening to some of that hearing. It's like they're living in a different century compared to a lot of us. And then trying to explain to them and saying, this is the type of stuff you hear. And we brought up other things in that testimony. I know, JJ, about Hungary and China. And they're saying, well, no, it's not like that or stuff like that. And you're just shaking your head saying, yes, it isn't quite like that. Yes, we have freedom of expression, but there are things about that it just doesn't pass the smell test, so to speak. But we'll see how it goes. And
ultimately, as all the jokes I've made in the last 5 minutes about it, I still want to, I haven't given myself time to really look at it, but call me skeptical regardless.
But the other thing they brought up, I know one of them from Quebec brought up bilingualism. And it's too bad JJ didn't push the 1 point, but it's hard when you're on the clock and stuff like that. But the other thing is, I would worry about the French content creators. Say they go to us in Anglo Canada, right? To English Canada, they're going to be flooded with things of, why is this in my feed? What, you know what I mean? And that's just going to
Oh no, they'll
them and make them feel worse, you know what I mean? And make them maybe not want to be on YouTube or on Twitch and stuff like that, which would
they'll
be
have
saddening.
they'll have a separate algorithm that they'll only get French, French language content. We'll also get French language content, but they will only get it. Like they'll somehow hack the system so that happens.
Uh, but
But keep in mind, there's keep in mind a lot of the people who will
it would have
be
been interesting to see if they brought a person from Twitch on that too to explain that to them, because it's like, how do you even figure out Canadian content on video games or Twitch or any of that? It's like that'll just go into the ether.
Only
Yeah.
Ubisoft games will be permitted, and only from the specific studios in Canada.
I was thinking of Tribute Games because they're working on Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge, and they look like proud French Canadian boys and stuff like that, but they love
Okay.
the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which is an American property, and they're making that game, and they're involved. Emu from Europe's involved, and then obviously Nickelodeon from the States are involved. So it's kind of like, what is that even? It's like probably the Canadian government would say no, not even close to Canadian content.
Was the Scott Pilgrim game developed in Canada?
No, it was started in Canada at Ubisoft, and that team from Tribute, before they went their own way, they worked on a bit of it, and then remember it went to Ubisoft Shanghai, finished it up.
Okay.
Wow, that's a. But would it? But I know that the heart of the question is: would it be considered Canadian?
Canadian enough, I guess, is the real question. But
we will have that. Let's see how many. Let's see how many boxes it checks off. Okay.
well, checking off boxes, I think we were talking about, because it's coming on up, is TCAF is coming on up.
Well, do you want to start there this week? Do you want to start there, or do you want to get back to that a bit later on? I mean, it's not the freshest news we have to talk about, but it's a very Toronto news, isn't it?
Well, I know they have that, and I know people I was talking to were talking about the Canadian Open, because they're going up against Greg Norman and the Saudis' rival golfing league, supposedly coming up. So
that's something else altogether, though, right?
So it's like there's controversy, as they say, everywhere. It's like, I know TCAF has their own mini one we were talking to, which was interesting, to say the least.
Yeah, well, you know what? We haven't talked about TCAF at all in 2022 yet. And usually around this time of the year, whenever we start talking about the conventions, we talk about Anime North and TCAF because they happen at roughly the same time. That is not the case this year, virtual or in person. And so the Toronto Comic Arts Festival it happens next weekend, right? June 17th to the 19th.
So I guess it's Father's Day weekend instead of Mother's Day weekend, so to speak.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's true. Nice way to put it. That deserves a bell. So this one's in person again. I mean, I think they'll have some online programming.
I think
but
they have a virtual component, they said. So there is going to be that.
Yeah, okay, yes or no? Is this the future of conventions, having parallel components, like in person and virtual components? Just quick aside.
Yes, but it will diminish rather quickly unless there's another pandemic or a surge.
So you think so you don't think it's a long-term thing?
I think it's going to be a long-term thing, but I think the attendance is going to be, minor. Like if I remember, at the first year of the pandemic, if we want to call it that, I forget if it was TCAF or another organization. Maybe it was TCAF, but I think they got Neil Gaiman to speak, and like there was maybe 700 people at peak, and I'm like for that prestige of an author, that's it. And that was during the peak of the pandemic where everyone was staying home. So I feel that last year, of course, almost everything was virtual. They're going to get fairly, high attendance. But as the years go on, like I think this year there'll still be, couple hundred maybe. Maybe I'm being too conservative there, but next year, if things are even more normalized in the world, there will be even less and less until they'll see is it worth it to keep it going. It probably is for accessibility and things like that, but I think the programming will continue to be reduced and all that kind of stuff.
And rendered and undermined. Undermined is probably too strong of a word, but certainly not nearly as emphasized.
Yeah.
I guess it depends on where you're getting your guests from too, right? Because online component might allow you to get some guests you might not otherwise have gotten, or in the case of this year, ones that may not be able to get into the country, right?
Yeah, and I think that will be continued. I think, the technology is there. People are now used to it because of the pandemic. I think it will be, and I think they will try to share that so that both people in attendance physically and those at home can access some of that. But they might also try to keep some of it to in-person attendees, so, paid ticket holders, so people buy tickets.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. See, now that you bring up 700 for Neil Gaiman, what was the peak for anything that happened at Anime Lockdown in 2020, James? I think they mentioned it happened during
It was Discotheque, and I think it definitely was above 700. I know the ones that Discotheque did after that was definitely over 1,000, but I know they were over 700 for the
I think they got to
Anime
4
Lockdown.
figures.
Yeah, I remember it being close to 1,000, like close-ish.
Was it close to 1,000? Okay, I was thinking over 900, like 900, 950.
Like possibly.
Okay,
I don't
but we
remember
are
the
close
exact numbers. I do remember it was not 4 digits, though.
Okay. I was thinking 4 digits, but I guess we were, if anything, we were close. And I just remember JP marveling at that at the time.
Yeah, no.
And so we're talking like a big guest, and Neil Gaiman's no small fish at all. Pretty big, actually. And at best 700. Okay.
From what I remember, I could be wrong there, but I remember being shocked that few people were watching whatever the number ended up being.
A bit of a bummer in many respects, too.
It'll be interesting then, because I was just looking at some of the guests, and Neil Gaiman is going to be at TCAF virtual this year, so that'll be interesting to see how that would play out then.
Well, that's not what we're about to talk about, though.
I think Neil Gaiman. Hey, can you guys hear me?
Barely.
Ooh,
Barely, but bring it up.
I think the Neil Gaiman stuff might be pretty big this time with the Sandman being announced and all.
Oh, yeah.
Well, maybe a little bit. Sure, why not?
And then
Let's be optimistic here.
TCAF needs all the optimism it can get.
Well, it's just
it's weird because they had their stumbles, and then they have this new stumble with, I guess, what you would call their new leadership, so to speak. But it gives you that idea of they started out small, they started out like that fighter type mentality in the way
yeah,
that they're the small and scrappy. And then it's that thing of it kind of comes up on you. They've become so big and so like such a big thing. Like I remember standing in the line thinking, and there were some people in that line. I forget which manga artist it was for, but it was these Americans, and I guess they were saying, "Oh, this is like just as big or even as big as was it New Press Expo, which is, I guess, an indie comics event down in the States, which is really big and stuff like that. And you're like, holy smokes, this it's like we've really grown since, I guess, the aughts and stuff like that. Where it was
2000
actually out of the parking lot of behind the beguiling and that, and by on
then
his
eventually
dad's.
on a
Except
set by
Except TCAF didn't stumble. TCAF was Wile E. Coyote on a plank of wood out like on a precipice and sawing off the plank of wood near the base of the cliff and then falling.
in that spectacular poof of dust in the distance,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. And the yikes when they saw everyone staring at them from, the land saying, "Why are you doing this stupid thing?" And, then they tried to save themselves. And,
Well,
we'll
that
see
that
what
that's
happens.
the that's the to use your Wile E. Coyote metaphor. That's when they brought out that tiny umbrella.
So I guess where we look at is we probably should get a tiny bit into the details. So it was about one guest supposedly they invited called, I guess, Pink Cat. And supposedly what they're saying from their side, whether we want to believe it or not, is that one member of their team or whatever liked what they saw on Instagram or something to that effect. And I guess somehow they said, okay, we'll invite this person, but it makes you wonder about the checks and balances, right? Of how they're inviting their things and say that they'll be better in the future, right? But it's definitely when you're looking at, because they are looking at non-traditional comics and stuff like that, so you could understand why they might look at TikTok or look at Instagram or all these other things online. But you got to be careful with that, right? Because some of them may not be they may be more colorful than what you want, and that's being polite.
I mean, super polite considering this artist openly racist, openly anti-Semitic, openly transphobic, openly all these different things. Then all the tracing controversy on top of that, and then the main feature after all of those previews and short films comes the NFT blockchain of it all. Like when it comes to the alternate comic style of it, cool. Like I don't think most of the TCAF uh, artists and writers that they invite are, I'd say, more narrative comics. They're like maybe some comedy joke strips. They have had single panel artists before. It's not that it's new, but definitely the attitude of this artist and the sort of modus operandi is a little bit off of the usual TCAF fare. But that's fine. I like branching out in different parts of art plus words as a medium. Cool. But yeah, the fact that they didn't see or didn't vet all of these things and then made this person a featured guest is what is mind blowing to me. Um, and then having to backtrack and say, "Oops, one of our staff liked them." It's like, is that all that it takes? Who is the staff person? Did they have how much power did they have? Why did no one say anything? Why did
And
no one
that's
research?
And that's the thing too, because Chris Butcher and a lot of the old guard decided to step down, and obviously there were things on that end, and then they brought in a new group, and I guess this is definitely, to say the least, a big stumbling block for them. But in regards to the statement, it does leave you to believe it's like, okay, we understand you were looking at this person's Instagram, but all the stuff you described, Jeff, it should have come through, you would think, in that to say maybe we shouldn't be looking at this person. But what the statement said, just to give you guys an idea, was TCAF initially extended the programming invitation to Moeel on the basis of their daily digital comics work on Instagram and the personal importance of the work had to one of our team members. At the time of this invitation, the organization was unaware of her online conduct, plagiarism, or allegations of tracing. We apologize for programming and promoting this artist. We made a mistake. As a promise to our community, we will use this as a learning moment as we move forward as an organization. We'll re-examine the checks and balances we currently use to process our programming decisions. And it's kind of funny too, because I thought it was a learning moment before when they were trying to move forward with a new group. So they're definitely going to be under the light bulb now, that's for sure.
They just need this. This was one of the last things that TCAF needed after the whole Chris Butcher controversy last year, isn't it?
I feel, like to me, if I use my previous analogy, TCAF is now in like, 7 different types of casts and kind of waddling, forward. And I do have a lot of sympathy because, like, I see so much value in TCAF. Like, it's something that, I can promote to students. It's something I can encourage students to work for because it is an attainable goal. Not that it's easy, like, getting, a comics market position at Anime North is probably easier despite less slots, I guess, but it's still something that it's relatively open as far as content. Like if you have manga style stuff, if you have daily strip style stuff, if you have full on graphic novels, um, you know, fine, and even to the point where I wasn't involved in this fandom, but something like Homestuck. So, digital, interactive media, sequential art, is I'm not sure if they would revisit that in the future, but it had its place there. Web comics have its place there. It's fantastic, and the fact that it's free um, is remarkable. Um, like the fact that it's been able to survive and thrive and increase in popularity. Artists all around the world know it, respect it. We'll see how that goes after this.
How long that
But
how long that
And they
continues?
did
Yeah.
expand to Vancouver, but yeah, the Toronto-based one, it's like that's the most incredible thing is they've still kept it free for attendees, so anyone can go to their events wherever they are and go and listen to either panels from different artists and stuff like that. Go and see different artists or mediums in that at the Toronto Reference Library or even in the Zine Alley at Cumberland. Lane down across the street there. Like there's so much worth in that. And even on the video game side, it's not your typical video games you usually see. A lot of them are very experimental and kind of leave you with something to think about. You know what I mean? And I love playing around with those type of things.
it's this incredible bastion of creativity and ingenuity, and I think that a lot of the artists who were upset about the Pink Cat, invitation, it comes down to how antithetical that this artist's practices are to the spirit of TCAF and how much they were celebrating this guest. I feel that if blockchain NFTs or something was something that an artist did, a little bit on the side or something, and they were just an exhibitor. So they just had a table along the rows like everyone else. No one, like, this wouldn't have been a controversy. There might have been a few people going like, oh yeah, don't like that person here, but fine. Like, I'm not saying that, like, no one who has ever sold or minted an NFT, whatever the vernacular is, should be allowed here. As I've said in many episodes ago, I'm not the biggest fan of this, but I'm fair-minded enough to say, like, yeah, it's fine, but celebrating that kind of person, I feel, is antithetical to TCAF, at least in the way all of this exists today.
Yeah, I think the two element, like you mentioned the NFT element to this. The two that stick out to me and what bothered me, and this is like coming out later on. It's one, the tracing, so the plagiarism accusations, and then tracing previous works in many respects. But what really did it to me was the attitude, especially after the invitation was rescinded and Moeel released her statement. That's the part that kind of bothers me.
As it should.
Like there was like I get it. She's of Iranian descent, but she just seemed so quick to play that card. It just sounded so defiant.
It would have been so easy to just tweet disappointed, one word, and then move
Well, I
on.
wasn't expecting. Yeah, sad, disappointed.
Yeah.
Hey
A la
guys, come
Trumpy.
on, man. She's a single mom. I mean, come on.
Okay.
Sorry to jump in like that.
I'm sure lots of artists who come to TCAF are single parents.
It's well, it was that. It was there was just a lot about that the statement that just felt so felt so wrong. And don't get me wrong, I'm not totally sure I would have been into the work regardless. So this is the thing about being a featured artist. No matter how short the time frame was, you're now known to the people who wouldn't know about you.
Yeah, because you're
Unfortunately.
kind of front and center, as they say, and we may not go to every one, but sooner or later you're going to take a look and say, hey, what's this person about? And yeah, that's not a good look. And they should have went beyond maybe just the Instagram account if that's what they were looking at. But you would think some of that would seep through there, you would think.
Yeah, I was not surprised at all
But
at her
by what?
response.
Oh, at the response. Okay, the rescinding of the invitation probably with the backlash that had ensued, I spoke with a couple artist friends as well who weren't happy about this, and they felt
Just based on my general impression of Pink Cat and having gone through her Twitter feed, I feel like she is too prideful of a person to just say, yeah, I'm disappointed. She just had to go off like that.
yeah,
So it doesn't surprise me at all. And you know what? Good riddance.
you're okay with it. So you were fine with this
Yeah.
because this is the first time we're really asking you about it to this episode. I mean, because you and James are more James, Kevin, Jeff. I think they're probably the most active when they in terms of going to TCAF. I've never been to it, but you three I know are more into that and are regularly there. So, what's the fallout? How badly has this hurt the TCAF brand? Like it's taken a bunch of bruises.
It'll depend on like when this was announced. A lot of the independent comic scene basically said, they're not coming anymore. It depends on if TCAF's response was fast enough that they didn't actually cancel their flights. I feel that if the artists and writers and creatives who said that they weren't coming out of protest of this decision, I feel that if they still come, if they still have a good time, I feel that TCAF will be able to recover. If there's gaping holes and people haven't forgiven TCAF, I feel that they might be in a little bit more trouble.
Oh, Kevin, what's your thought?
Well, I think that the people who have been going for a long time and the people who really care about the situation and more influential people in this scene will be more inclined to not go, or consider not going. I think the general populace won't care that much or won't care enough to boycott the event.
I'm along that line, actually. It's like what was that Houston convention last year? Got the name again.
Anime Matsuri.
Matsuri, kind of like Matsuri last year, right? Joe average fan really doesn't care about those things. They just like the sights and the sounds.
And
That all said,
they may be coming for other guests as well. So
yeah,
exactly.
That all said, it's the cliche. It's that popular cliche. It takes a lot of effort to gain trust and regain trust, but it doesn't take that much effort to lose it.
I will say that, like, personally, I'll still go to TCAF if I'm interested in certain guests. So, in my case, Akane Torikai, who recently put out Sensei's Pious Lie.
That's kind of
well,
funny.
at least here in North America.
That's an older title, but for us it's newer since they're just doing the omnibus. But that's an interesting one to bring over, to say the least. But given previous guests, I'm not surprised they get that type of guest. But that's an interesting work to promote still, right?
That's their first Kodansha guest too, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, I guess it depends.
This is the first time Kodansha has brought over a guest that I can recall.
Because Vertical is a part of Kodansha, but yes, when they did Vertical guests before, I don't think they were a part of Kodansha yet, right?
Nope. In that sense, Vertical was a separate company.
Yeah, I think it was Vertical was their own thing, and it was probably through Ed Chavez that they got those Vertical guests and that. And I don't think we had them. And they've done Seven Seas. We've done Viz, obviously. I'm trying to remember if we had any Young Press guests, but I don't think so.
Not to my recollection.
But yeah,
Drawn Quarterly, because before Yoshihiro Tatsumi passed away, he went to TCAF. This is much earlier in TCAF's heyday. Like, this is within the first maybe 2 or 3 years.
And that's because, Drawn and Quarterly is based in Montreal, so they did have start relations with different Canadian publishers and stuff like that. So.
Yep. And then we had Gengoro Tagame, who was through the Massive and On Ishii. So, yeah, a lot of variety in terms of publishers. One thing I will say, in Akane Torikai's profile picture for TCAF, she's wearing a Creamy Mommy shirt, actually. And
I saw that, and it's a stylized washroom stall, it almost looks like, that she's in. It's kind of...
And not only is it it's not just any generic Creamy Mommy shirt. That is a Creamy Mommy shirt from Undercover, which is a very popular high-end Japanese streetwear brand. That shirt costed, I think, $300.
And so you
I know because I have one.
Oh, because I was going to say, how can you know that? Because her arms are in front of Creamy Mommy's face and stuff like that. So that's why I was thinking how you know that. I guess if you have one, right?
Because Undercover used that specific print.
Wow.
Because that season, what they did was Jun Takahashi, creator of Undercover, did essentially 8 different clothing lines in one season because his theme that year was based off of the 80s movie The Warriors. So he created 8 different tribes, and each tribe had their own aesthetic. And one of the tribes was called the Bloody Geekers, and that was the one where they used Mommy's print throughout some of their pieces, as well as the mascot character whose name escapes me right now.
At least for this TCAF, because I believe she's going to be one of the in-person guests, correct? At least people hopefully will be able to get an autograph and stuff like that. And like their last Japanese guest in 2019, which was Junji Ito, it's like, oh boy. Just remembering back to that, people lining up before 6 a.m., like even before 5:30 a.m., just to get an autograph.
That's the power of Junji Ito in today's world.
Give him
I
credit.
wish it had been 20 years earlier. I just would have been able to walk up, shake his hand, get an autograph, and away we go.
Probably have a
Right?
conversation too. Probably have a conversation, right?
I remember barely being able to get the autograph for Inio Asano the year before.
Yeah, it wasn't as bad as Asano. I was able to get through, but I do agree there. It would definitely you had to be there and stuff like that. But yeah, Ito was on a whole nother level. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, there.
I think if Inio Asano came this year, the line would be a lot bigger.
You think there's that pent up demand?
Yes, because so many young people have read Poon Poon now, whether physically or illegally. So
Because I think Poon
it's
Poon at that point
it's
when
big.
we had him was Poon Poon was done, and then we had
Yes.
Dedede was just starting to come out
Yes, that's correct. Because I got Poon
because
Poon 7 autographed.
he was promoting. I know Dedede, and now we have it now where it's just finishing up. So Viz will probably finish it up next year, but now they're finally going to take it to the next level because that'll be, I think, his first animated one of his works actually adapted to anime. Which will be intriguing to see how
Yes.
that plays out.
Not bad then. Well, bottom line, are you guys going? Just out of curiosity?
I might check out the virtual, but I don't know. I just not feeling it yet for going to certain events. So we'll see how it goes, but maybe virtual.
Jeff, Kevin, Mike?
I'll probably go mostly for the manga panels because there's usually some other manga panels that happen as well. Because usually Deb Aoki shows up, usually Erica Friedman shows up, but hard to say who's going this year. Like I haven't looked into it,
I think
so I
some
don't
of
know.
it too is who can get through the gauntlet that is Pearson Airport.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's another current events thing altogether in the news.
Although I do if I remember correctly, Erica Freeman was not happy with the Pink Cat fiasco. So who knows if she's coming or not.
That's one of plenty, really. Jeff, Mo?
So yes, I'll probably end up going for sure. I did want to, kind of tie this back. Like, I hate to bring up the pink cat thing again, but
No, that's why we're talking about it
yeah,
too.
but like
We can tie a bow on it, really.
one of her quotes was explaining the tracing of Tank Girl as, and I quote, "She is the only strong female comic that is a realistic badass, not looking like a sex doll." I believe that, and this is end quote, I believe that TCAF is, you know, above all for fans of sequential art and comics, as an art, Toronto Comics Art Festival. If this very heavy air quotes artist thinks that Tank Girl is the only non-sex doll comic book woman character, this person is not a comics fan. And I'm not saying you necessarily have to love comics to be a comic book artist, but it screams disingenuous to me, and it hurts that someone would say that. Tank Girl, to my recollection, not even written by women, and I'm not even saying that you have to be a woman to write a strong, realistic, non-sex doll female character. There have been plenty of women characters created, drawn, etc. by, cis straight men. Fine. But just that statement is such evidence of ignorance of the medium that it only digs, her deeper in that hole that maybe she didn't belong here. And I hate being exclusionary because I like being welcoming and saying that, the famous quote, comics are for everyone. I'm not sure that they're for her. And, I'm definitely not trying to criticize, this podcast or anything like that. But, because, the Anime Roundtable podcast, I realized that, a big part of, the discussions in that are the Junji Itos of the world. But I feel that it is my duty as a hobbyist comic artist to also spend this time to really recommend people walk by the hobbyist and independent artists at TCAF if you do go. Yes, the work is often kind of expensive because when you don't have a publisher, that's how things go. You do need to sell a zine for $15 sometimes, but you can see so many wonderful things. And like, honestly, those artists, even if you talk to them, if you look at their work, if you compliment them, sure, they might feel annoyed if that happens 100 times and no one buys anything, but for the most part, people are happy to have their work looked at. They're even more happy if you do buy some of their work. But and that's also what is so amazing about TCAF. You have everything from a 16, 17 year old kid who writes a zine, to your Viz, to your Penguin, Scholastic, like the big actual publishers, the Kodansha now, and everything in between, and all of that space in between is amazing. Plus all the indie game stuff that James mentioned earlier. um, I don't, for me, Anime North is, my, my Christmas. Like, it is my favorite convention, but, a lot of my heart is with TCAF. Like, I hope that this stain can be washed off, because TCAF, for as wonderful as Anime North is, as, an artist myself, TCAF is inspirational in ways that a lot of other conventions can only be in small parts of their artist alley. And, they're, a lot of those artists are playing to a crowd. They're selling prints of the popular things at the time. TCAF, artists take risks. And it's everything from, as I, repeating myself now, but everything from like the hobbyist who does it, in the summers on their free time, to those big publishers. And they collaborate, and they coexist is the right word. There's no animosity really between them, which is amazing. Like, people aren't upset that the big publishers are there. People aren't, like, for the most part, laughing at these, small, independent artists. Like, everything is fairly harmonious, which is some sort of, Toronto miracle. So yeah, go do TCAF,
Maybe
please.
maybe a miracle in the world at large these days.
Yeah.
The thing, though, is you just have to remember to go to all the different venues along the Bloor Young corridor. You don't want to be just at
Oh yeah.
a reference library or the Marriott for the pails and stuff like that. Like, as I said, the zines and a lot of that, they had put them at Cumberland and stuff like that. And I'm not sure if they're going to be there, which is across the street
In
from
random
Toronto
other
Reference.
buildings too. Like, I remember I went to a Scott McCloud panel. And again, for me, like, Scott McCloud for free panel signing, like, amazing. But like, that was in a building nearby. So like, make sure you look at the schedule, the pamphlet they give out, if they're giving out a pamphlet this year, or whatever app that they decide to go for. There's
I was
so
about to say that.
much.
Yeah,
Yeah, there's so
Yeah,
much for everyone interested in, this medium.
yeah, some are in the Masonic Temple, which are the beer ones, but even some of those small taverns nearby, they've had guests there, and I've seen some guests in there, and it's very nice and intimate and different to be in that setting than, say, being in a hotel meeting room, so to speak, right?
right. It's just funny you said Masonic Temple, because I just remember it more as a former television studio when CTV had it. I have a story about that, and maybe I'll share that one day. Well, I've shared a version of it, but maybe I'll expand on it one day. Mo, I know you want to say something.
Oh no, I was just gonna chime in. Jeff kind of went a bit there, but what's worse, the tracing allegations or her online conduct?
The tracing, or the attitude?
I mean, have you guys seen what she said? I mean, I'm speaking
Yeah,
from.
I mean, I looked at it. It's
Yeah, that's not cool stuff, man.
Both
neither,
both are
not
bad, but
truth is, Neither were great to me, but okay, Jeff.
Both are bad, but like artistically, you can make the argument for tracing in certain circumstances. I don't think that her work qualifies for those arguments, but a skilled lawyer could do so. I don't mean a real lawyer, but there are you can talk about parody, you can talk about inspiration. If maybe she just had better references. And didn't, and but that goes back to the attitude, the fact that she's so defiant about why she traces, and brings it back to like the admittedly terrible treatment of her home country, and occupying and colonizing forces, like not trying to discredit that at all, but it's not the same. Her attitude is worse. As Too Long didn't read, her attitude is worse. They're both bad.
I
Conduct
just thought, I just thought
more bad.
there's just, yeah, it's just the sides. It just really, that wasn't the point to me. She never really addressed it. Well, let's see if who gets wind of this. But moving on, and as I said, as mentioned, Toronto Comics Arts Festival happens next weekend from June 17th to the 19th. So it's free if you're in the area and can get around in that area. By all means, it is worth a check out. I admit maybe I won't be able to check it out because well, the rest of my life has a habit of getting in the way. But let's move on for a second here. We mentioned, I think in the last episode, that the first anniversary of Kentaro Miura's passing came and went. And now that pairs up nicely with the news that we now know the fate of the continuation of Beserk.
It's kind of interesting how that all worked out because we talked about what it would take, right, to have it continued. So it's interesting to say the least, especially the statements which show there's a lot of heart in this series from all the creative team, from the publisher, from the fans and that, because they talked about that one Berserk event they held in Japan, right? Where they just poured their heart out, some of the fans and stuff like that, to the work they saw and like all the things.
It
Because
was a
that happened, I think, after his passing. And that
yeah,
was
it was a
in Tokyo,
tribute.
I believe.
It was wasn't it like an exhibit, a tribute exhibit
Yeah,
of
they
some sort?
called it the Great Berserk Exhibition or Die Berserk 10. And that was by Young Animal was helping to put that up, and it was different, I guess, panels and things like that, and they had a special store and stuff like that. So
Hmm. So upshot is that 6 chapters will be published, and then a new arc will be worked on,
yeah,
and it'll be
so
supervised by Kouji Mori, who was, what was it? Well, I mean, where did he sit on that in that hierarchy there?
Very good friends.
very good friends, because remember they had, I think we had talked about before, hadn't we, Kevin, about this relationship they had had together and stuff like that before he had started Berserk and stuff like that, and then
Yes.
where they both went and stuff like that. So if anyone could do it, it was probably him. And then remember his team, basically, I forget, it was like Studio Gaga or whatever. All those people have
Yes,
been
it's
under
Studio
him
Gaga.
have been under him for so many years and stuff like that. So on the art side stuff like that, like he had a very, I think they're a fairly experienced team by now, so to speak, and stuff like that, even without his supervision. So you have them, plus you have Koji Mori. And remember, it wasn't like, oh, Kentaro Miura just told him where the goalposts were and stuff like that. Like it was over many years and stuff like that, and decades, that he discussed this story with him as a friend and stuff like that, and conveyed stuff. So they do have what you would call maybe the bones. Maybe it's not
I was
exact,
about to say template. I was about to say template.
but maybe they aren't going to have, like, people are going to make their decision, right? They're just going to say, oh, this is great, and they'll move forward. And other people are going to say, because Manura isn't involved, we don't know if it's actually going to be his vision or whatever, but we have had works in different mediums where it has transcended the death of the creator and stuff like that. And either way we go, I think it's going to be something special either way. And I'm just going to see how it all plays out. And I think that it's still going to be something worth reading because I think their heart's in the right place. The two statements from basically Koji Mori himself and from the Young Animal editing department. They had it in Japanese, they had it in English, they had it in French, and they're long statements for each of them. You can tell they have a lot of heart and they really want to do it right and stuff like that. So that is, I think, a great starting point. And obviously, they have really thought about it. It wasn't like a few months later, oh, we're just going to throw it out there and let's go. You know what I mean? Like it's a year later and they've really thought about it.
It seems to be news that has, a lot of people happy, a lot of readers happy. That's the thing that caught my attention about it. People are glad that it's continuing. I think they would have understood if it didn't, but they're glad it's continuing. There was doubt, though, despite all that. Despite all this talk about, yeah, there was a template in place. Yeah, Mori had a very good sense of it. Yeah, there was a will within the staff. This really was in doubt, though, wasn't it? Like, that's the impression I still get, despite all that.
Well,
There was no, like, but was it also just the emotion and the freshness of Miura's passing, kind of speaking into that?
I guess the thing is, we don't know what exactly happened behind the scenes, right? So that's where the doubt comes in, where you're like, well, I don't know if this can continue and stuff like that. But obviously, on their end, there's so much passion and so much, okay, here's what we have there. And it was that thing of, we want to have, like, we love this creator so much. We love him as a friend, as a creator, as a coworker, as everything else, right? That we want to do the best for his memory and stuff like that. And this is one of the ways we want to honor his memory, I feel. And so I feel like they're on the right path. And maybe it's not going to be everyone's cup of tea, but I think I think it has the makings of something special and stuff like that. And we'll see how they end the Elf Island arc and stuff like that. Which is kind of funny me saying that because we're always trying to get to the bloody island, and now we're getting off it.
It's like it does feel like it has the blessing of Miura's family. Not totally sure if that's the case. I don't think much was said about how his family feels about this.
Yeah,
But
they didn't say anything in that respect, but I would have to feel like with what we read and stuff like that, that obviously they talked to people that was his family, friends, and you know what I mean? Like it wasn't like we're just gonna go and do it, right? So
no, it does. Like you said, it sounded like there was a lot of thought put into the events of this week, and that it's been in motion for a very long time, even in many respects before Miura passed away.
it's a very rare occasion that this does happen at all, and it has to be a special person, a special work that makes people want to believe and continue on with the journey, and that's for like the creative teams and the actual audience. And I think that this is definitely one of those works.
Yeah, I don't doubt.
And you saw that too because he took Kentaro Miura took so many breaks, right? And people just, okay, he's on his break. We'll just have to work with it. And then when he came back for that one chapter, sometimes once in a while, it's like, oh my god! And people were with him chapter by chapter, panel by panel, because they saw him grow from '89 to the present. And some of the panels comparing before in the past and then now to the present, it's like he was doing paintings now compared to what he was doing in '89 and stuff like that, which feels more simplified, right? Kind of
Well,
crazy.
it's like, I guess everything concerning Berserk evolved, whether it be the visual style to the character development.
Hmm.
In respects, it's a reflection of the creator too.
And I'm sure when they
And
had the discussions, they talked about that evolution and stuff like that because they're probably looking at it from the ball of wax of all the conversations that Mori had with Miura and stuff like that from decades to probably the most recent ones, right?
yeah, I'm just of the belief, and to your point, James, Berserk does check off a lot of those marks that you were talking about earlier. So I'm sure the fans will be happy, and it'll be something to look forward to. And as I said a year ago, it's not something I have given myself the time to read, but I know what it is. I know what it's meant to the industry and to the fandom, especially. I wouldn't say especially outside of Japan because I think it did have that impact there too. Just the fandom in general. Like his death was felt
Hmm.
when it happened a year ago. And I think this news is kind of, the fans now are feeling that too. For something so bloody, there's a lot of love.
Wow. The story, it's kind of funny when you think about it. Like, yes, there's a revenge story. Yes, there's a lot of blood and guts and everything else. But it's more to it than that. And as you continue through the story and the redemption of Guts and him finding family, losing family, and now regaining family again, it's not going to end, I think, in a simple way and stuff like that. And it is that connection of Guts finding his place in the world, finding this family, finding this fire to stand next to and to like alight these other fires, as he liked to say it many chapters ago, many bonfires across the field, so to speak. You know what I mean? So that is something I think about and I'm thinking about now with them continuing it, and it's just a continuation of that journey and of this new family that's going to continue on and probably bring a lot of smiles to a lot of people, I think.
Yeah, I think so. I think a lot of people, as I said, just feels like a lot of people are happy to see it continue. Um, I want to get the others if they want to chime in on this one. Mo, Jeff, Kevin. Yeah, I know Kevin. I know Kevin.
When I first saw the news, I thought it's as if he has risen from the dead. Like he's back, even beyond the grave. Uh, in regards to my general thoughts about it, if Kouji Mori really did hear it from Miura's lips, how it was supposed to end, then I can't see there being a better person to be involved in the process.
So probably the best guy to take the mantle at this point.
Yeah, I do see some concern from some people because I don't think they were the biggest fan of Mori's own works. I don't know if James brought it up because I wasn't there for most of it, but
Go ahead,
he's
you can bring it
also
up since I hadn't brought that up yet before.
okay. So he drew Holy Land, he drew Jisatsuto. It's I haven't read those, so I don't have an opinion on them, but given how his assistants are involved, I think it's in good hands. And I think it's funny because in the past people would joke about, oh, like, what if Miura dies before finishing Berserk? And now that that's actually happened, people were, distraught and people were sad. But you know what? It's all good now, guys. It's gonna be back. And we will see the end. You thought it wasn't gonna happen, but it might very well happen now.
And we might be at a faster schedule. You never know, too.
Yeah,
You
I didn't want to bring that up, but yes, it could very well be in a quicker schedule nowadays.
Now, the
Yeah.
interesting thing to mention to your point, Kevin, was the fact of what the credits are going to be going forward, which is original work by Kentaro Miura, and then it's manga by Studio Gaga, so they're going to be doing the heavy lifting, but then supervised by Koji Mori. So he's in a supervising role, so to speak. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So that's why I feel there's a lot of good things on that front, plus the statements we had already talked about.
Yeah. Well, I don't have much else to add. Do the other Jeff, Mo? Do you want to add anything, or before we start going into the last parts of the show tonight?
Worst case scenario, it's bad. Best case scenario, it's good. Like,
You're quite okay with
I
it,
think
though.
I don't.
Indifferent or just
well, like
okay?
it's just like, if it doesn't turn out well, then the fans can go back to being sad that it wasn't able to be finished, but they still have the original work by the original author. But on the other end, like, maybe it goes in a direction that people like, or new fans find, or people find something new in. Yeah, so it's not necessarily indifferent. Like, I think it's interesting, because
Yeah,
it's in a lot of ways, manga is more like a novel in North America, as opposed to our sequential narrative comics, where you know authors and artists die all the time in like monthly serial stuff. Um, so that's been happening for decades at this point. Um, and these characters fill the same kind of cultural positions. But when it comes to manga, it is much more like a prose novelist. Here, like written
well, yeah,
word.
that you brought up an interesting thought, actually. Like, that I never really thought of. Yeah, when we think about traditional Western comics, the creator, I mean, sometimes, like, yeah, sometimes a creator, they're a creator. Stan Lee, Bob Kane.
Please say Bill Finger too.
I mean, I mean, like they those become names, but they're not always involved. Often, not they're not involved.
They retire, they move to different projects. Grant Morrison, defined Swamp Thing, but then stopped writing superhero comics. You know, uh, Neil Gaiman did Sandman, stopped, and then came back, and then did other things. Like, it's relatively a different process, at least for the
Well,
most
it
part.
just yeah.
But companies still own them, right? Like, at the end of the day, Dragon Ball is Shueisha. So what they want to do, they will do, and Toei. Uh,
Well, if
so
there's value in it, yes.
yeah,
But it's just weird that when you think, like, there's a strange, like, the manga tends to be a little different because the creators are very much tied to their works. Like, you can't think of a title without its creator a lot of the time. Well, okay, maybe that's overstating it, but
for the most part, like, I think, like, if you look at something like Ultraman, which isn't necessarily the same thing, or something like Astro Boy or Cyborg 009. There have been instances of reboots, reinterpretations, but often the original character is still linked there, kind of like, Stan Lee would be. But it's not necessarily like the same sort of thing like with Berserk. Like, it's not a continuation. It's let's reinvent this for a new audience. Versus like the same equivalent, like have like what happens with Western comics would be if a current, like, the One Piece author like Oda just decides, what, like, let's do a couple arcs of Fullmetal Alchemist in my writing and art style. And people would see if they like it or not. If they really like it, maybe he'd get 5 more years of it, which it doesn't happen, and it's a very interesting cultural difference.
yeah, yeah, like artists. well, this is more as tribute, but artists imagining characters in their own style.
Yeah, which does happen for sketches and things like that.
And yeah, for gags and tributes, I guess. I mean,
There are some anthologies, and I've seen it with different mangas where they get different creators and then have their takes basically on the characters and stuff like that. And I think I've seen some of them actually come out here in the West. I know Seven Seas has done a few for Dance of the Vampire Bund and Made in the Abyss and stuff like that, where they're anthologies of works where other manga creators come in and say, "Hey, this is my take on the characters," and some of them can vary quite wildly, and it's interesting.
And also
but
keep
it's
in
hard.
mind, like, the percentages are reversed as far as the creatorship goes. Like in, Western comic traditions, like both, the standard shape of a Western comic, it's usually an artist and writer are two different people. Sometimes it's the same person, but it's the rarity. Versus it's the opposite. I've found with manga, it's usually the phrase the mangaka that has assistants and everything, but it's this one creative vision, writer and artist.
Yeah, and then when you hear cases of, well, there's two, then that's the one that gets the Spockian eyebrow, right?
Yeah.
Act Age was one of those, I guess.
And yeah, like these are like, as I mentioned at the beginning, like of this topic at least, like these are different in a lot of ways, different mediums. Like they've evolved differently. They're both sequential arts. As I still feel like one is like Japanese manga is in a lot of ways similar to a regular, like not regular, just text novelist here versus Western comics. Have this completely different path, but both, if you look at, popular culture and everything, I do feel that a lot of, especially shonen characters, can be to some degree equivalent to superheroes. Like there's a reason why Goku Superman fights have been talked about and animated and written about for so long, because I feel that they have similar um, cultural weight. Even if they're a different weight, they're made of different things. They're different colors. They're different textures. I feel that like scale wise in each country, a Superman is going to be a similar weight to a Goku.
One way to put it. Well, I guess just to end off the thought on Berserk anyway. Although I'm going to make a reference, probably coming back to what you just talked about in a more funnier way towards the end of the episode, Jeff. When are these chapters set for? Has there been a date mentioned? I don't recall reading one, but I can't say I've.
They said the continuation beginning with this year's 13th issue of Young Animal on June 24th. They said that's what the announcement on Tuesday said, that it will continue beginning with 13th issue Young Animal on June 24th. The manga will have 6 chapters that will go to the end of the Fantasia arc, Elf Island chapter, with the new arc beginning afterward. So it sounds like the next issue on June 24th probably will be the starting point of those 6 chapters. And usually they were doing before about one a month, so we might see maybe one a month, I think, going forward, if they've been spending this much time to say, hey, we got the idea for the end of the arc, 6 chapters, and then starting the next arc afterwards.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Two other things came to mind. I just thought about how the Embracer Group and Mike Richardson over at Dark Horse Comics probably did the happy dance when they found this out.
well, yeah, okay. I can see why they would.
It's arguably their best-selling franchise now, out of all of their stuff.
Well, you understand.
Arguably. Because I don't think they own the Star Wars manga anymore. I don't recall. I think those did go back to Disney. I don't remember for sure. But if if it were excluding Star Wars, that's probably their best-selling franchise now.
Well, okay, conceivably, just going back, just in terms of Disney, where are they parking their such rights these days? It can't be just like they have some of it with Tokyo Pop, but not necessarily Star Wars, is it?
I couldn't
Maybe,
tell
maybe
you.
not. Okay, but yeah, this is just one of those things, and it's just an interesting follow up to the news from a year ago. More to come, I'm sure, and I'm sure we'll hear the reactions as the chapters come out.
And we're finally getting Volume 41 in November, apparently.
Oh yeah, so on the topic of the translation here,
That
Correct.
was formerly going to be the last volume, but not anymore.
well, it'll just be the last last completed, and then we'll just see what happens next.
Yeah, so it's a year later, which is usually what they did. But I guess that we'll leave that. They'll just continue on, I guess, with those omnibuses, the big hardcover prestige ones, because it was going to be interesting to see what they would have done for that last one, because it was 3 volumes per thing.
Who knows? Okay, let's start to wind it down a little bit. Let's talk about some headlines in brief, whatever we want to call them. But maybe stuff that we kind of overlooked on the last episode. And is there something? And then maybe just talk about a little bit of Anime North stuff before we go too. Just some updates to things we've been talking about there, and just start to make our own Anime North preparations known. Could you just quickly on the headlines though, on the stuff in brief? Do you guys want to talk quickly about Urusei Yatsura or the live action Robotech movie? Those two caught my attention in rather charming ways, but I don't know if that's really worth any further talk.
Or you could throw in the One Piece live action stuff, since they were showing the ship and I guess stuff like that.
Ooh, yes, yes, and I forgot that actually came out this week. Some pictures from the set, although not necessarily the actors. Which one of you guys want to tackle for a moment? Sounds like Mo would want to tackle the One Piece stuff.
I mean, I'm hopeful. I'm always hopeful when it comes to Netflix. That
Yeah, but as Cowboy Bebop kind of proved, hope is not always a good plan. I mean,
Different teams, though. Like, it's not the same
yes,
people.
there's a lot of. Wasn't there some similarities? A few of the same people, not all, not completely the same, but some similarity, some common people in the two production houses. It's just the thing about like I know looking back on Cowboy Bebop, there was this feeling that everything, like some of the visuals felt a little plasticky. And that's sort of the feeling I'm getting, like just from on first blush of some of the One Piece visuals I looked at. But then again, One Piece in itself I thought was a little bit more campy in comparison to something like Cowboy Bebop. So maybe that's just me.
Yeah, I think it's fitting.
we'll see.
Hmm?
We'll see.
I mean, I think we had a version of this talk back then when the announcement was made, right? How serious should it take itself? And in the end, those are like we're talking two completely different properties anyway.
From the sets, like, it really reminded me of like a Disneyland or Universal Studios, like, the Mario World kind of thing. Like, it looks like they're having fun with it. They're keeping it not necessarily cartoony. Like, it doesn't look like they're making like a world with, like, candy cane pillars and everything like that, and googly eyes and whatever. But it does seem bright. It does seem fanciful. Um, so, like, I'm not a huge One Piece fan, but like I'm excited to see this world in live action. I think it will be, more of a fun novelty than Cowboy Bebop was, but it's a we'll see kind of thing.
Yeah, I think I think I know where I can understand your thought on it in that sense. Mo?
I just feel bad, man. Cause like we're gonna get it. We're gonna be one season. It's gonna end on a big cliffhanger, and then we're just gonna get canceled. I mean, like, it's just gonna be like
That's the over-under, right? Yeah, like, I mean, with the way Netflix is going these days, yeah, that's entirely possible.
Yeah,
Who's the popular character they're gonna end the last episode with that everyone will want to see more of?
Zoro shows up the last episode or something.
No, he'll be there the first episode, or second at latest.
Oh boy. Anyway, James, Kevin, or no comment yet?
No comment yet, just because I haven't been following any of the live action One Piece news.
James?
Nothing on my end, but I think Mo has something to say.
Or you maybe or add something else. I mean, he's the guy who he actually brought it up also in the to me before we got started. So thanks for reminding me.
I mean, they had a whole like presentation this week with a whole bunch of trailers and stuff, and I just feel like, it sucks because like now it used to be where if you get one season at Netflix, you instantly get a second, maybe a third. Now it's just like you're lucky if your one season even comes out, right? It's
Well, who knows? Yeah, that's the thing. It's what's the over under? 1? Probably a push.
It's not an animated thing, so it will come out at least. Unlike R.I.P. the Bone Project. So Netflix doesn't hate live action series, so the one season will come out.
Well, it's not that's not where I think the dangerous hate is coming from. It's from fandom. To me. I mean,
the North American One Piece fandom isn't as strong as the Japanese one. Like, for Japan it might be a fun novelty, but they'll have their manga and anime, so I don't think it will taint the brand, really. Which is weird, because, like, Dragon Ball Evolution, like, the creator was so upset with that, but, like, I don't get that sense with the One Piece live action for some reason. Like, I think it will, again, we'll see when it comes out, but, like, I get the impression, like, if it's mediocre, fine. Like, the Japanese One Piece fans will move on.
yeah. Okay. Well, nothing else?
Yeah, we'll see, man. We'll see.
Okay. All right. Well, a couple of okay. I guess some thoughts. The only just to give a quick thought on both Robotech and Urusei Yatsura, and really these are just kickers. Sony's involved in the Robotech movie. We've mentioned that before. I guess we know where ultimately it'll show up. When it comes to Urusei Yatsura or Lum, this is like old school news. I mean, looking at that trailer though, it feels like you update the animation, so it does have a completely different feel to it. But my only I was never how do I put this? Rumiko Takahashi fans, you can tell, go across different generations depending, and you can tell how old somebody is depending on what title they ultimately fell in love with, right? I mean, I think I've had a similar theory about your favorite, about what people's favorite Studio Ghibli work would be. I have a similar feeling about Rumiko Takahashi works. So a lot can be said about you, your age, your preferences, your tastes, about what your favorite Rumiko Takahashi work is. And when it comes to Lum, it's probably more on the age side. And then, Lum and Inuyasha, basically you're getting both young and old in that argument. So there's a part of me wondering how, older fans feel about what's about to happen here. But that's my thought. That's just my thought. I'll say this much: the animation looks pretty slick, and I think could look really, really funny and fun with considering how the animation was in the 80s. So it should be cool in that sense. Anyway, those are just my own quick thoughts, and And I'm not going to oblige the others to chime in on that if they don't want to. But before we go tonight, and this is the last thing, since it's always proper, especially at this point in the year, we should talk a little Anime North. Because we're a little over a month away from Anime North, the stuff we're going to be doing there has started to, or at least the murky picture about what we are going to do there is clearing up a little bit more by the day. And we are about 2 weeks removed now from the virtual pre-show as well. Did anyone catch any of the virtual pre-show?
Just the very end.
Very end? Okay, well, I only saw really the very beginning and a little bit of the kimono presentation. It wasn't I admit it wasn't a thing, but I think like Anime North always had that together, always in its online presentations had its togetherness feel to it. And I think that's really the purpose of the virtual pre-show. And, there was that warm and fuzzy feeling throughout it. There's nothing special. I didn't see anime hell for that matter. I only saw a little bit of, as I said, the kimono presentation and a few other things, but really mainstays and I think it probably successfully served its purpose to whet the appetites of people who wanted something that weekend, because it was on Anime North, the traditional Anime North weekend, and just to say, okay, just wait. Just give us a little bit longer. Well, it's coming.
Yeah, and they had a lot of different things from different parts of the programming and stuff like that. So you kind of got a slice of everything, so to speak. So different people could go in and try different things. And for us, I was just like Jeff as well. I saw the end, so I saw Anime Hell. I also saw the end as well for when they were signing off and stuff like that. Chris came in at one point, and then I think Andrew was going around touring the office, and then Kathy was in there for a moment, and they were showing different things in there. So kind of getting people back into the groove in a way too, of saying, hey, this is where we usually would be on this Memorial Day weekend, right?
Right, and just to preface who these guys, who we were just referring to, Andrew Kaidosh, the host of the online versions. Chris is referring to Chris Nabelsky, who's been on the show before, and will probably show up again one more time. Well, in the near future, I'm just not totally sure if it'll be before or after Anime North, but he will show up again. He's the social media manager at AN, and Kathy Schutt, she's the graphic artist coordinator. A lot of the visuals, that's her own doing. She also acts as the office manager as well. So those are some personalities that many regulars at Anime North, like the most casual Anime North goers, probably don't know about. But we always like to acknowledge them for what they do there, and it's a lot of work. I know that. I do have a personal story about the virtual weekend. As I said, I work near the Anime North complex. And the biggest reason I wasn't watching it was because I had to rest up. I was working overnight on Saturday night. But on the way to work, I did pass by the Delta just to say hi to the gang there. And wouldn't you know it, I passed by after 9 p.m. If you remember the programming, there was I think it was D20 Live doing a 2-hour program beginning at 8 p.m. So when I passed by the AN office there, nobody was actually there. I think they just hit the play button at 8 o'clock and then just went out for dinner. And as I was leaving, that's where I ran into Eileen, Chris, Andrew, and Kathy. They were just getting back to the office as I left, and we had a nice little conversation. There was another part of the other reason that they were all there and why this was probably going on this weekend was, they were doing a general meeting and trying to begin the final touches for what will happen on the weekend of July 15th to the 17th. So there's a lot of work still to go before then. They're not just sitting there right now. So some things I think were firmed up. I think I know that there's talk about some of the policies. The mask policy is still in place. I don't know what to mention about that at the moment. I think it's a full mask policy. So just a warning: just have your proof of vaccination still in place. I know there'll be talk about that.
And it is on the website too, Mike. So anyone that wants to know, it's all there in black and white about having your vaccine passport or proof of it, and of course the masks and stuff like that. And I know for some it's hard because all these different conventions, depending on where they are, right? Some of them have different policies, and I know AX just announced things that is kind of contrary to some of what we're doing at Anime North, right? Because they just announced saying that they are going to have masks, but you won't have to prove vaccination, stuff like that.
Just remember to read up, just like every other
The
policy.
good thing, though, is depending on how you feel, it's like, and it's a consideration, I'm sure, for others too, is the attendance cap is not going to be on for the July con for Anime North. So
Yeah, and a lot of the other stuff that you know of is happening. Kevin, we should mention this, shouldn't we?
What about Nominoichi?
Yeah, Nominoichi sign up came and went, and we both got tables. We're Kevin and I will be are set to have tables beside each other.
oh, I was going to say, was it a shared table or separate tables? Or
Oh, well, we'll be on separate tables, but we'll be beside each other. It's just that there's a dilemma. I admit there'll be a dilemma about to be presented for me with it. The Nominoichi happens on the 15th at 7 p.m. and I'll be there for a little bit. It's just, well, we can also formally announce that Anime Roundtable is set to tape 2 episodes, both on the Friday and Saturday at 9 p.m. So that actually overlaps a little with our time at the Nominoichi. So that'll be a bit of a rush there, right? Right, Kevin? So have you made your list yet of stuff you're going to sell?
I'm starting to create it now.
Okay. Well, you're probably further along than I am. I have to go into the vault.
Yeah, I was gonna say. So when are we going to the vault, Mike? Since you were seeing if people were willing to help you out on that.
Yeah. Okay, guys. So want to come and visit, and we can visit the vault. Anyone interested? Aside from Kevin, Mo, James.
Well, everyone's working, Mike.
I know that's the problem. Okay. Well, yeah. Let's see if the schedule matches. But I was planning to go in sometime next week and have a handful of items worth, and it'll be and I'll put it up on the boards. So that'll be the one of the other highlights on a personal level. And I'd be remiss to mention, just to start hyping it now, I mentioned that I'm doing a panel there, and I know the time for that. Friday and Saturday is going to be quite a whirlwind. That 12-hour period beginning at the Nominoichi on Friday night is going to be the start of what could be a harrowing 15, 16-hour period, which will culminate with the panel that I'm planning to do on Saturday morning at 10 a.m. And this is before the second podcast episode we're planning as well that evening at 9 p.m. So it's going to be an interesting 24 to 28 hours we're going to have at AN. Yeah, we have yet to decide exactly how the 2 podcast episodes are going to go. We just know we're doing them, but everything's fluid. I guess the only thing I'll mention about the panel right now is that it is a story that I think fits the 25th anniversary of Anime North. So I will tell a story from AN's distant past. and how it, I think, set up and shaped up what's become of it in the present. And I'll maybe the next episode we do, which will be the last episode before the convention, we'll be able to talk a lot more about it. Or I anticipate the next episode we do will be the last one we do before AN. I'll be able to talk a little bit more about it, and then I'll tell the full story at the convention. But I really hope it's something that people get a chance to see. I think the time may ensure not many do. So as much as I hope that people want to see it, maybe it's also given me a bailout of some sort, so I don't have to feel too much pressure in terms of preparing it. But I've given the others here a quick rundown or a quick overview of this story, and the game and the organizers, Eileen especially, they were nice enough to lend me a couple items which will be which I'll show off during the panel and telling that story. So I'll tell you more about it next time. And if you're up early enough on Saturday morning, hope you come in and we can tell you the story. Listen in. Anyway, I think we've overstayed our welcome tonight. And you guys are working tomorrow, right? Well, so am I, but you guys are working in the morning, right? More or less?
Yep.
Okay. Well, I guess we should some of us should get ready for bed. So that's about it. That's the podcast for tonight. So once again, let's tell you where you can contact us. animeroundtable@gmail.com, at animeroundtable, animeroundtable.com. We are on Twitch, twitch.tv/animeroundtable, and on YouTube with more stuff to come in the future. You know what? Just as a quick aside, I know you guys also, let's not go there just yet. Let's not end just yet. How's the video game stuff going, James? Because I know you're still trying to download something.
Well, me and Kevin are trying to download. We're trying to buy a special edition. So, but we've given up on that.
For tonight?
We're just gonna have to try again tomorrow and see if Nintendo's site comes back to life in North America, because they rejigged that Nintendo of America site, and the My Nintendo site for Xenoblade 3 Special Edition is where they were exclusively going to sell it. And you would think, with the passion of the fans and them knowing those special editions, what they sold when they sold them in general retailers like EB Games, Best Buy, and Walmart, and all that stuff online, that they would prepare their servers, and their servers were not prepared when you have a tweet 30 minutes later saying they're going into maintenance, and it's still been in maintenance, and no one's really gotten any, like, we can't even get it into our cart. Like, everything is like we're either in a queue, or once you get out, it's just blanked out for the pre-purchase and stuff like that. And those who did get
some people got in some people got in earlier in the evening.
There was a back door. Yeah, there was a back door at 6 p.m. and some people got some then, but who knows what they sold, if anything.
For me, it's just the end of the days of play sale at on the PlayStation Store. One or two items that have my attention, but who knows?
Well, it's kind of
funny. Yeah, it's just I don't know yet. And then, well, remind me next time. We got to talk a little esports, because Overwatch League finished up its first major. What's it called? Kickoff Clash tournament this week. But people don't know that. I don't know how many know that Call of Duty League actually held their third major of the season, and that actually took place in Toronto. That took place at Maple Leaf Gardens at the Mattamy Athletic Center. And I know there was at least a passionate crowd. It might be a good test run, because Toronto is also set to host the third major tournament in the Overwatch League in September as well. So that might be something to note. But it just had me thinking live events have a certain atmosphere to them. But I will talk about that. I know we've basically run out of time, but it might be worth talking about later a little bit more as time goes.
Oh, also wanted to bring up one thing. I don't think this was brought up while I was briefly away, but in regards to the whole Seven Seas union situation,
Yes, we forgot about that. Okay.
they apparently hired the second biggest union busting
Was it
Law firm.
law
Oak
firm.
Tree Deacons in that? And I guess the other reason it was important is we had talked about Seven Seas before. And then after we had talked about it, they had Seven Seas release their statement, and they also decided they weren't voluntarily going to recognize the union, even though I guess the supposed union said they have 32 of 41 eligible members that would vote yes and stuff like that.
Yeah, so
So
that's
it continues, to say the least. But
Mm-hmm.
as they say, you do. I don't think, some people may take this the wrong way, but I don't think any company is going to voluntarily recognize a union. I just don't see it happening. A lot of them will take their legal right and want to have an actual vote. It just depends that, as we see, a lot of them are more aggressive, to say the least, and take some firms that take it to an extreme that it doesn't really need to go to. Just have your vote, have your say, and get it done. You know what I mean? Don't BS it. But unfortunately, it's not going to go that way.
Well, maybe we shouldn't have been surprised. So
Not at
we'll
all.
be keeping. No. But those are, I guess, all of what we just mentioned are stuff that we'll keep up with in the very near future, and I guess we'll bring up again and elaborate on it even more. So stay tuned.
Also,
Something to look.
the United Workers of Seven Seas does not condone harassment of any kind. So,
And I think they said they weren't saying boycott,
not yet.
but some people are saying they won't support anymore. So it's hard to say which way it'll go, to say the least. But as they say, it's pick your poison, right? But I think I'm still going to
Well,
buy
yeah.
certain
Well,
series and stuff like that at present. But that's a personal
it's a
decision,
lot
as we
more.
all say. And I figure Kevin's going to be the same, right?
Funny how you say that, because there's a Seven Seas sale going on at Right Stuff this week. There's some things I might get. I don't know.
I was thinking more
This whole
continued.
situation has affected my thought process a little bit. Like, whereas before I would have just bought it right away. Now I'm like, I don't
I
know.
was thinking more of the continued series, you know what I mean? So I wasn't sure if that was your thought
Yeah.
process too, compared to new, you know what I mean? But then you kill
It's
whatever chance you had for certain creators to get into the market. So it's like you're damned if you do and damned if you don't.
it feels more murky than maybe how some GameStop employees feel these days. Anyway,
Yeah, I guess the last thing I'll say is, like, I guess Jason DeAngelis cared more about his bottom line than paying his employees a fair wage.
oh come on, and should we really be surprised about that?
Not really surprised, but just a little not a little disheartening. It is disheartening.
Kind of interesting when you think about it, because obviously he was a translator before. He did the first 4 volumes, as we said before, of Beserk and stuff like that, and his name was on there. So you would think that if you're coming up through the trenches, you would have a bit more I don't want to say sympathy, but you know what I mean, a little more heart. Unfortunately, it hasn't exactly went the right way. The only other thing is, I'm not sure how much DeAngelis actually owns of Seven Seas. That makes me wonder too, right? Because who knows how many other partners he has there now over the past 20 years.
Anyway,
Hard to say.
yeah. So that's a story that'll, I'm sure, we haven't heard the last of, and we'll talk about again at some point in the future. Okay, now we can end it off. Once again, you can contact us at animeroundtable@gmail.com, at animeroundtable, animeroundtable.com, twitch.tv/anime roundtable, which is barren at the moment. So is pretty much our YouTube channel, but it's there, and ultimately we'll add something to it, I think. Also, don't forget to give us a review wherever you're enjoying this podcast, whether it be on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, etc. Because good reviews will always help us in the algorithm, whatever form it is, and hopefully help us get more listeners to stumble in on us. What type of reviews are we looking for, Kevin?
I don't know. I guess any review at this point.
We're not picky.
I was thinking maybe some Canadian reviews too, because maybe that's what the Canadian algorithm is going to be like whenever they do C11, right?
Yeah, whenever.
Yeah, but yeah, give us a good rating so that we can broaden our listenership.
Mhm. We endeavor to do episodes regularly, maybe roughly every other week or thereabouts. Regardless, hit the subscribe or follow button on all the platforms we're on so you can be notified whenever we do add something in whatever form it is. Also, we keep forgetting to mention this, but if you have a Spotify subscription, check out our Anime Roundtable music playlist for songs that are related to many of the things that we bring up on this show. The theme song is entitled Fubuki Snowstorm by Piko Misaki, which is the title track of her latest album. You can check out more of her music at picoinfinity.com or on her Facebook page at Pico Zen Music. So until next time, thanks for listening. Good night from Toronto. And join us again for another edition of the Anime Roundtable. But I will admit, aren't you glad at the very end I didn't make the Wu-Tang Clan reference? After all that.
I'm always glad.
Like we won't be sued into oblivion.
Dollar bill, y'all.